program will begin shortly. Please take your seats. The program is about to begin. Please take your seats. Please welcome back to the stage, Katie Piccarelli.
I can make your hands clap. Said I can make your hands clap. Somebody singing something.
So how was day one? Awesome. So this session stands between us and a happy hour and the party tonight. So hopefully this will be an enjoyable session for you. Today we have a customer panel for you, and it's actually moderated by a customer. So I honestly don't know what they're going to say today. So please welcome to the stage Aidan Beeson, contractor for the British Army, to moderate our customer panel.
Well, thanks, Katie. And so welcome to the Atlanta Ansible Fest panel discussion, or the warm-up act for the happy hour, which I like to call it. I'm Aidan Beeson. I'm the Linux architect in a branch of the British Army called Information Application Services. And I've been contracting with the Army for around about 20 years now, even though I look much, much younger. I started off automating Unix and Linux and Oracle clusters, and now work with all things Linux within the Army's private and public clouds, including all their DevSecOps and Ansible Tower. Now, I'm really psyched because we've got a fantastic set of panel guests here this afternoon. So I'd like to welcome on stage Jeff Brockway, Ajit Jan, and Joseph Tihau. Good afternoon, guys. I'm just going to do a quick overview of all the lovely chaps who are up here today with me. So starting on my left, Jeff is the Manager of Operating Systems and Infrastructure at the Tennessee Valley Authority. Apparently, TVA is the only publicly owned power company delivering within the southeast with a focus on clean power. Jeff manages around 40 people and is responsible for the hardware stack, OS stack, security compliance, automation, and business continuity. Now, I tried to find a little fun fact out about all of our panelists today, and I think Jeff kind of won, because not only does he drive a Tesla, because you have to if you work for a power company, but he also races his Tesla on drag racing. So, yeah, quite jealous about that. Ajit, next one along, is the Senior Director Cloud Automation Team at Healthcare Services Corporation. Healthcare Services Corporation is a Blue Cross Blue Shield health insurance company covering 5 states. It is the largest custom-owned health insurer in the US, and it's an 83-year-old company with over 22,000 employees. Ajit is the Senior Director responsible for infrastructure cloud, automation, and tooling engineering. His team is around 50 people, and they started their automation journey over 2 years ago, initially concentrating on provisioning automation, orchestration, and configuration management. Ajit runs marathons, so I'm pretty impressed with that. Chicago Marathon, was it?
Yeah.
So that's pretty impressive. That's one up on me. I can't run down the road and get tired. Joseph, at the end, he's systems engineer from Datacom Systems Limited, based in Wellington, New Zealand. So he beats me for the mileage to get here today, and also for the time zones as well, so I can't complain. Datacom is New Zealand's largest Red Hat partner, with over 5,000 employees covering all aspects of IT, such as software development, application support, running data centers and clouds for government and commercial sectors. Joseph himself is an SME for automation. He, a bit like my good self, started off in Unix administration and is now using Ansible in a project to replace a key government legacy system. He's Red Hat certified engineer and also a Red Hat certified specialist in Ansible automation. And he loves traveling, so it's good that he's here in Atlanta. I think you've got a couple of weeks afterwards, haven't you?
Yeah, definitely just roam around a bit.
Let's have a look around. That's great. So that's the panel today. Okay, Jeff, I'm going to start with pick with you to start with. So how did you start your automation strategy, and what were the initial goals you were looking for when you started?
So the initial goals we had were to take a very manual process of building out servers, which take anywhere from 8 to 12 hours, depending on the server, and fully automate it from beginning to end. So this started out with using vRealize automation, and we quickly outgrew that as we started automating and used Ansible, moving forward. The end goal, once we finished that and saw the value in it, was to begin delivering this to other groups throughout our business units, to allow them to utilize the speed and standardization brought by automation.
So Joseph, a similar sort of thing? Did you start off with provisioning, or?
Yeah, it started out with people like me on the ground, when we wanted to improve a lot of things in our daily lives, in operations. Like being a systems admin, there are a lot of tedious tasks, stressful tasks, mundane tasks that you do repeatedly. And during those early days of Ansible, we were trying to use it on ad hoc commands, ad hoc installations. There was a P1 incident that we used a lot of Ansible commands to address or to run some utilities across different servers. And the guys were just amazed on how soon we were able to provide the data they need in order to analyze the problem and resolve the P1 incidents, stuff like that.
So what were the sort of things you were trying to automate to start with? That was provisioning, or
It started with underground, and then later on, we were able to partner with our one of the biggest commercial customers we have there to do an infrastructure as a code automation for server builds. And then after that, we had a very good foundation in order to provide an automated solution for a key government replacement project, a legacy one. And we tried to automate it fully end to end. And then after that, we also had the basic utilities to come up with their own automation stack product called DAO, Datacom Automation and Orchestration. And the journey is still ongoing, right? There are a lot of steps to be taken, and I think it's a good milestones for us that we've reached all those certain points.
so you've got a big sort of healthcare company, insurance company. You've got lots of customers for that. Is it how's the automation working for your company?
So we started our automation journey from the provisioning of the infrastructure, right? So the automation was very fragmented within the organization, and it was taking up to from 13 days to 45 days to provision the infrastructure for our customers. So we started the journey to create a private cloud, a self-service private cloud, and that's how we started in the journey.
So when you were thinking about that, were you thinking that we want to automate some stuff? What can we automate? Or did you look at it from the other angle of we've got this goal we need to get to. How do we get to it? And the answer was automation.
Yes, exactly. So we wanted to serve our customer in a more efficient way, and that was our main goal. And we used automation to get to that goal.
So is that same for you, Jeff? Are you sort of starting off with the goal in mind, or just we want to get some stuff automated?
It started out with we wanted to get some stuff automated, and then as we saw the value coming back from it, that really drove our automation strategy moving forward.
Cool. So, Joseph, if I was to ask you, what does automation look like in your company at the moment? Then is it?
I would say it's starting to mature. As I've said, we have very good foundation in place. It's a matter of consolidating everything together and making the cultural mindset and everything in place across the board. We have a very large organization rather, 5,000 people across Asia Pacific. So we have, I think, a very good foundation based in Wellington because we've done a lot of automation from there. And I think we need to, we need to push for automation like a mindset across. So it's a journey still. We have conquered a lot of areas, but at the same time, we see a lot of opportunities on other technology areas as well, middleware, databases, and stuff like that. On the compute space, we've done amazing job, but I can imagine that we can still conquer a lot of space from there.
So when you're thinking about the team, so did you start off with an automation team that then spread out, or did we have automation in separate teams? How did you go?
So the teams were very fragmented initially. So we set up an automation team, which was responsible for the automation. And once we did the self-service portal and we automated the provisioning part, that's when we started moving it outside, as in like bringing in more teams and have them do their own automation. We haven't reached to that point yet, but we are in a journey to reach to that point.
And Jeff, you come from more of a Windows background, and you've now moved across into automation. Have you seen that things like Ansible sort of stretching across between Unix and Windows, and you can sort of get a good spread across both of those? Or
Oh, definitely. We view Ansible as a tool now instead of the platform like Red Hat. So it's utilized across all of our business units, but it was the same with us, but it's starting out in one group and then slowly fragmenting, and it's now gotten to a point where we've built centers of excellence to start training folks to handle pieces of the automation.
So that's really interesting, because I think we've got a similar issue in the place I work in the Army, in that we've got a few key people who know Ansible and can kind of get on with it. And now we're trying to spread the word out a bit and get people off of their normal sort of command line cowboy mode to use things like Ansible. Have you found that you've had to do similar things where?
Yeah, so it becomes hard to enforce those standards. So building these centers of excellence where you take some of your best guys and implant them into a place so that they're all kind of train the same and then send them back out and have those guys start training groups, you know, and we've gone far down the DevOps pipeline where each group's got its own CI/CD pipeline that we help develop and spot automation for them to start building, you know, and as they mature in that space, we help them out, you know, with more training and developing of standards as they move along.
So have you got the similar thing where you have a training program for everybody that needs to go through and use it so they know the standards and...
Right, so exactly. So we are trying to build a center of excellence within the automation team now, and what we want is basically these teams will the people in this team will basically go and work as a consultant for other teams, help them automate, and then we'll bring back the center, the standards and the good practices that they learn, and also teach the other teams at the core.
And so what I found is that the technology is quite easy, Joseph. You know, let's face it, Ansible takes 10 minutes to set up. It's all of those standards and procedures and processes around. Was there any particular way you went around deciding how?
Exactly the point. Early on the project that we worked on, I think that's the major milestone for us, because it's a time that we needed to provide a very concrete solution for a government facility. And during those days, we were working with architects, solution architects, infrastructure as a code architects, even with Red Hat. So we're consulting a lot on the practices and at the same time the standards, the way you do inventories on this magnitude and all those kind of stuff. But at the same time, we already know bits and pieces, so we have our own style already. And I think what helped us in that is we requested Red Hat to provide their expert in New Zealand, to fly in their expert in New Zealand. I think they spent a week or so training us so that everyone will be on the same page. Everyone will get to understand how are we going to do it as a team, as a company, and all those kind of stuff. And from then on, we established everything right from the start. And there are bits and pieces that you need to learn and discover along the way that you need to adjust and all those. Yep.
So we heard earlier, Jeff, about Microsoft and the way that they're planning all of their deployments. And one of the key things they said was they needed to have metrics coming back to how good this automation was. You're sort of higher up in the management. What sort of metrics and processing metrics do you need to?
So for us, when I was excited this morning to see the release of the metrics for Ansible. When we look at those, we want to see the value it's adding to our business partners and to us. There's a lot of things that go into what we do for each of the employees, and we want to maintain a good work-life balance. And we don't feel like going over mundane daily tasks over and over again is a good use of anyone's time. So as we look at those two things, it can really start seeing the metrics of how much work we've eliminated, which opens the door for us to focus on more high-value work. We're very excited to move forward with that.
So for people like myself and Joseph, who are a bit more, you're higher up, we're sort of down at a bit more of the cold face. If we needed to provide you, sort of as a senior director, with metrics on automation, what sort of things are you looking for to get out of people like us?
Yeah, so data is the key. If you can show me the data as in what it was before and what you have done after automating it, or what it will be after. So before and after is the key to show that this is the matrix and this is what we have done, and how much time you are saving by doing that automation, and the cost. So if those are some of the keys which you can show us, that would be the best thing to get the project launched up. And then at the same time also, HCSC being a member-owned company, we are very much into into the work-life balance. And if you can show also that, hey, by doing this automation, I don't have to sit on these nightly calls or do this mundane job, that will be another key for us to move forward with the project.
That's very interesting, because one of the key selling points for us is that even though the Army, you'd think was 24/7, their IT support runs from sort of 8 o'clock until 5:30. So if you're trying to put patches out and you say, right, well, we're going to have to take it down in the middle of the day on a Wednesday because literally the support staff are only there in the middle of the day, it just doesn't rock very well with the end users. So what we've used is with things like Ansible Tower, with the scheduling, is we can schedule it to run its jobs overnight, do the patching, do the whatever it needs to do, sort the machines out, and bring them back up in quiet hours. Have you, I'm assuming, Joseph, you've had sort of similar things where that's sort of given you like the ability to get more done because you can do it out of hours? And
Yeah, a lot of things at this point are still like somewhat on the industry testing phase. So we haven't really like come across some outages issues and all those stuffs. But we do have a lot of scheduling that makes it more efficient. File transfers, ad hoc file backups, and all those that you don't really need to manage at all. You just receive email notifications if something fails. Yeah.
So we saw Microsoft obviously using Microsoft Teams, and other people use Slack and various other collaboration tools to get their message around. Jeff, how do you guys do it? Did you have a sort of centralized messaging system that lets everyone collaborate on automation tasks? Or?
So what we've done is we built an entire program around it. So we've got a manager that builds and goes to these teams, engages them, and gets their folks involved. That's really the only communication medium we're using right now in order to get the word out.
And is that similar with you?
Yeah, so we use the collaboration engine. We are always on that collaboration engine. Our team is always chatting among themselves and trying to share whatever they learn in there, and not just share, but they also joke around with jokes on whatever they learn and whatever they mistake.
So what I quite like is the fact that, for example, we've set up, we've got a Mattermost, which is a bit like Slack. We've got a Mattermost server in our setup. And we actually get Ansible to tell it when it's starting particular jobs. So people can understand that a certain server's going to be going down and when it's come back up again. So we sort of have that sort of automated internal systems as well as the chat that goes on as well. So it's quite useful for collaboration and also for seeing how the system's functioning. People can get alerts up through the Slack and the Mattermost and things. So it works quite well, I think, doesn't it, when you get something like that?
Yep, that is something which we are trying to build also, but we haven't gone to that point.
Okay. So there's always problems with automation. I've certainly come across it where people think their job's going to be automated away, and I'm sure Joseph has, where you're sort of trying to sell it to somebody. How do you sell to somebody that this is a good thing, rather than you don't worry, you're going to be redundant in the next 3 weeks because we'll have automated your job away?
I think I'm a really great testimony when it comes to that. I started out as a systems admin, right? And at first I was skeptic. Probably most of us would be skeptic at first because those worries like, I'm going to lose my job, I'm going to make myself dispensable. The truth of the matter is, I was able to like polish all these things that I'm doing regular day to day, and they gave me opportunities to work on more interesting stuff. And one of those is working on multiple automation projects. And as you go through along, you not only work on your technical expertise now, you get to review codes for your colleagues. You get to review codes for your database colleagues who are SMEs that are also trying to automate their own stuff. You get to work with them. It's more collaborative. It's more growth for people like me because now I can work on TLS, I can work on a few database, I can work on some Windows stuffs. And I think that's the fruit that they don't realize later on. There are a whole things out there that's for us to learn. And containers is one, and I just actually started working on some of the containers, so there's definitely a lot of good advantages trying to automate all those tasks that doesn't really add good value.
So obviously people like Datacom and the British Army are very lucky to have people like me and you working for them. But how do you go around getting this team together? What sort of people do you look for, personalities do you look for to get that initial sort of Kickstarter team together for automation?
So technology is ever changing, right? So the biggest thing that I look for people who I hire is I'm looking for a person who has good soft skills, who is ready to understand, ready to learn more, and who is always out there to look for how to change things. So those are the main things which I look for in a person who I would like to hire in an automation team.
So Jeff, is that correct? So innovation is one of the key things that you want someone who can look at a problem and think of different ways of solving it with automation?
I would definitely say innovation and then probably collaboration. Being able to understand other teams. You'll reach a point as you're in your automation journey where you've automated most of the things that are low value in your own group, and you need to start branching out into other verticals, within your enterprise, and having that collaboration tool, understanding how that other person works, and then being able to innovate on top of that. I agree with Ajit. The technical skills can always be taught, and usually are obsolete within a few years anyway. You're constantly updating those. So those two, collaboration and innovation, are definitely what I would look for in an automation admin.
And have you found particular teams of people to be more resistive to getting automation off the ground than others? Obviously.
I think it's tough to convince folks who haven't seen the end value. I think once you get one thing automated for them and they are like, oh, I can now work on this other thing that I've been dying to work on, I think that's the key to getting that buy-in. When it comes to upper management, you know, it's they constantly want to see the dollar saved or the value you're delivering to the business. So those are two battles, you know, on different fronts that you have to fight. But I think overall automation speaks for itself once you get those first one or two pieces in for them.
So actually, in the British, where I work in the army, we certainly have some people who are in their little castles who've got all their knowledge, and they don't like people getting in to use it. For example, that's my SAN, you know, sort of mentality. That's my switch. How do you go about getting people who are sort of shields up with this sort of thing, and it's my stuff, to get them to allow people like me and Joseph to automate it and take that little bit of what they think special away from them? Is there a particular method of?
Yeah, so that is a big challenge. Means it's hard to break in those people, but as you start showing them some value by doing, first you have to work with them, get their trust. If you can win their trust by showing them a little value in doing something which they have been doing a mundane job, and you show them that, hey, I can do this by writing 4 lines of code, and you can use this. And getting that trust with them is the key. And once you have earned the trust, that's when you start automating with the help of them, and then have them basically run their own automation. And that's how we are planning to do it. Like, automation team will create a version 1.0 for a particular vertical, and that too along with that team. They are not going to create that automation in a vacuum. They will work with that team and create that automation. And once that is done with the version 1.0, it's a continuous improvement process, right? So version 1.0 is done. Now you hand it back to them and let them run with it. And whenever they need any other help or any issue they land into, that's when they come back to the automation team and ask the team to help out how to resolve that issue.
So that's quite interesting. So let's say, just for argument's sake, it's like a person who does Cisco networking. You can say to them, right, you can own all of this bit of automation. You can check it out. You can test it. You can make sure that you're happy that it's not going to break your switches and your beautiful configuration you've got in there. And then once you've done that, you can then happily release it to the wider community, because you know you validated it and you're happy that it's not going to mess up your wonderful switch configuration, and it's all now automated. So that's essentially the key, is to get the people on board. Have you found that, Joseph, from the other side?
Yeah, I was just collaborating on some of our database guys, and there's always that challenge. And we want to strategize on how we can penetrate those kind of challenges. And I think we definitely have a good plan in place in order for us to address those situations.
So, Jeff, if I'm in your company and I'm trying to sell automation to upper management, what's the key points do you think someone needs to come up to a guy like yourself to say, we've got this great idea for automation, this, and this is why you need to take it on? What's the key things you're looking for?
So I want to look for the value that we're going to either deliver to our customer or deliver up our own line to say, you know, we've eliminated this many hours of work, which now allows us to focus on these key deliverables. And it's what we want to see ultimately out of that automation is to get it into the hands of as many people as possible. You know, so we're going to focus on common daily tasks that maybe, you know, whether it's resetting a password or user account creations, things like that, get more attention in our area to say, okay, we can eliminate 100 tickets a day by turning on this piece of automation. Those are the type of things that we can sell and push up the line to say, hey, we've saved 300 hours a year by implementing this playbook.
So is that right? You head for those key points which can be automated and get value very quickly to the overall organization? Is that how you sort of?
So I would say at the end, I would look at how is it affecting my customer. That's the key to me. I will always look for if the life of the customer is getting any better. If it is, then yes, we will go for it.
And probably to add on to that too, I would say standardization, like being able to deliver the same thing over and over. In our specific enterprise, we've got probably 40 different business units, and these guys may do things entirely different from one to the next. And being able to deliver that automation where it's the same end product that's being delivered, but now in a standard fashion, really helps overall drop the cost of whatever it is we're doing, because you're no longer supporting so many disparate configurations.
Because I think that's how we looked at it, is we had to look at those legacy touch points which were causing us the most pain in terms of time and effort. And in our experience, it's the number of people you have to get involved in a process that basically elongates the time. So if you've got to get network people involved, SAM people involved, the DBAs involved, that's what starts taking a job which should take a few hours into weeks. Is that what you found, Joseph? You sort of
Yeah, I would just like to add on Ajit's point that being customer-centric is one key factor, because customer feedback is key to for the management to like get on hold to this, right? Some of the business requirements from our business end users, from the customer side, they give us some of their tedious steps, right? Steps that will take multiple processes, multiple streams. And our first Ansible Tower job for a project that I worked on was actually for a business user. So they wanted to generate certificates for their members. It was multi-step. It will take, probably an entire day to communicate with all those people. And now we just have one survey form for that person, a very simple document that everybody can follow, even if you're non-technical. And they just click everything. It's foolproof as well. Business users tend to hate those technical aspects of it, right? So we added much intelligence into that, and they so loved it. Like, they were so thankful. And those feedbacks really add value, not just for management, but for people like me who are trying to innovate and improve things for them.
And it's interesting what you were saying earlier, Jeff, about sort of starting off the provisioning, because we're definitely in that space now with the private clouds that we've got internally, and trying to make sure that different classifications get the same automated processes run on them. So we have also got VRA in-house that we use to run our service catalog, but what we've done is sort of hooked it into Ansible to do some more of the sort of complicated tasks behind the scene that VRA suddenly starts having issues with, or it doesn't have enough compatibility, because there seems to be so much in Ansible nowadays that you can do, that sort of being able to sort of get VRA to do a bit of the infrastructure and then hand off to the rest of the workflow. Is that sort of thing you've found useful as well?
So it did when we were initially doing it. I think now we utilize the cloud forms with Ansible, but yeah, we were having issues in that handoff with VRA where we couldn't, when I looked at it, it was like a quilt. You have all these different pieces, and we were trying to stitch together that VRA just couldn't handle all of that. So that's where Ansible really stepped in and delivered for us.
So have you sort of moved more into the cloud forms then for your service catalog, and that hooked into Ansible?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Is that similar sort of thing as you? Are you sort of your cloud?
We are using multiple different solutions for the automation for the whole service catalog. We have a different place where we are handling the service catalog, and the automation is on a different tool set.
So when you've got all of these best practices within teams, how are you getting them shared across? How do you get those out successfully to the rest of the teams? How do you have like people who are your gurus that everyone comes to and gets the advice off, or how does it work in Datacom?
That's one of the challenges that we have, actually, especially in a maturing, consolidating automation of structure that we have. So we do have architects, and at the same time a core tools team that manages our automation platform in general. So we wanted to centralize it over there, and then we have support teams from different SMEs plugging in to that core tools team, so that everything will be managed centrally. At the same time, each of those SME groups and SME teams will have to manage and keep updating all those standards and fitting it to our central team. So that's our ultimate goal. But definitely there's a challenge on keeping it every time standard, and everything is updated and all those kind of stuff. So that's something we're continuously working on and improving on. But I think that will work for.
So Jeff, what sort of things do you look at for an automation engineer? Have you got sort of some key things you?
I would say definitely experience a little bit with our platform. We go back to the collaboration and innovation, being able to see things that can be stitched together and be fully automated, or even a step above that where you see 2 or 3 different processes, and we've started stitching those together. Our automation engineers have, where they were like, oh, we've got a playbook for a server and a playbook for SQL and all that. Start stitching those pieces together to being able to see that and being able to pass that information on to other teams, because as our automation engineers step in, they've got to be able to communicate with networking guys or platform guys and see what exactly they're doing and guide them along the way. And that's definite soft skills that are hard to come by in a truly technical space. So I think having those soft skills far outweigh the being super technical.
So I'm going to go on to a question which sort of interests me particularly, is that what, for all of you basically, one at a time, we'll go through it, but what is the thing that you're looking to automate next? What's like the key next step for your automation? Ajit, what's is it for?
So the key next step for the automation is basically dispersing this team, helping other teams to get into the automation journey. And then once we have all those teams, this team will be basically the center of excellence, which will be running all the standards and best practices. And where I want to get to is basically to a immutable infrastructure, more infrastructure as code. And that's the key. That's where my end goal is, more blue-green deployments.
Joseph, how?
That's practically our plan as well. I think one of the major challenges would be upskilling, especially some of the team members who are really like up to scratch. I mean, right from the beginning, including the fundamentals of Git, including fundamentals of doing command line. And so what we wanted to do is try to come up with a syllabus so that we all like gauge everyone's capability at this point. They have very good expertise in their own field. And we wanted to harness that and put that into a lot of innovative things through automation. And we wanted to like map everything on what we know, what we need to do, and where do we want to go. So we're in the process of coming up with that. And I think that's a very good plan being laid out across there.
So what do you think will be the next big thing for you guys to try and automate then? What do you see on the horizon? What's the...
So definitely improvement on our Datacom automation and orchestration tool. So we wanted continuous updates on that, especially with the new Ansible platform that just been released. And at the same time, as I've said earlier, there are a lot of operational areas like middleware, databases that we really need to conquer. There are a lot of wins out there that we really need to get into. So that's why we wanted to upskill across all the technologies, because we wanted to cover all those areas that we can.
And Jeff, what's your main automation?
So over the next 12 months, we've actually have a self-service operations project where we're going through a study phase where we're going to each of these verticals inside IT and saying, tell us one thing you want to automate. The end goal out of that deliverable is not just that automation piece, but we're establishing the CI/CD pipelines. We're bringing those guys into those centers for excellence and showing them the basics. And getting that piece of automation delivered, and then leaving the door open for them to be like, when you guys are ready for your next piece, or you want to start stitching some of this stuff together, come back to us. We're going to teach you, the next layers of automation that you need to know. And so far, we've gone through 2 different groups, and it's turned out really well. Their CI/CD pipelines are established, and they're doing their own constant delivery now, which allows us, again, to step in, other areas and really automate what they can do.
Now, what's really great to hear from my point of view is that you guys have gone through exactly the same as we have. Is that we're not Google, we're not Amazon. We're trying to get to that sort of stage, but they've got huge resources, huge amounts of money, huge amounts of people, and it's great to hear other people like yourselves coming up with the same sort of process that we have, where you sort of have to start at a certain point, go, well, look, we're going to get some stuff automated, we're going to go DevSecOps, we're going to do whatever, let's choose something to go for, and then build on it. And we're not going to be great on day one, because no one ever is. And we're going to scale out slowly, and once we get that momentum going, then hopefully everyone will start getting dragged into the vortex of automation and start getting on and carrying on. So it's heartening for people like me, where you think sometimes in sort of a closed environment as government and the army, where you think, we're swimming against the tide, everyone else is going so much faster and quicker than us, like the AWSs, that you guys have also sort of basically gone the same sort of process as we're going through, and it is achievable if you put the time and effort in and get those teams together. I did have a question down here which I think is a bit too controversial, which was who was the most hardest team. I was going to say DBAs, but don't quote me on that, to get in. I'm not going to ask you that question, because I think I've now got myself into major trouble and I have to get it edited out of the video. But what I will ask you is, what's your highlights of Ansible Fest this year? What have you really looked forward to? What have you enjoyed going to see, Jeff?
Are we allowed to say the party after this?
You-
I think it's the collaboration is what I like most. I mean, getting other viewpoints. We get so almost like tunnel vision where we're working in our own enterprise, and to break out and go somewhere like this, where just what I've learned from you three guys up here is amazing, and it makes you feel not so alone that we're all fighting the same battles, and it's good to hear other perspectives on how people are handling that. That's stuff you can take back and really accelerate how things are going.
So, G, is it the party or is?
So I'm looking for the party, definitely.
okay.
I'm looking for the beer. But the one thing that I definitely want to get out of this Ansible Fest is the learning. There are so many people around here who have their own unique journeys of the automation, and I want to talk to most of them as much possible and learn about their journey and get some understanding how they are doing it. And I definitely, I need the beer. I'm on antibiotic, and I'm not going to eat my dose today and have a beer.
Joseph, do I need to ask?
No, I'm looking forward for the booze actually. Hopefully there's a lot. We're
Everybody.
skating. So yeah, I mean, interesting discussions over beers, over wine. So journey. The journey is, I think, what really highlights my Ansible Fest experience. So each of us is on a different phase of our journey, right? Some of us are there. Some of us are going there. Some of us probably starting here. And it's really, very, very nice to share those journeys. You see common points, you see common problems, you see common solutions, and you see solutions that can apply to you. You see solutions that you can apply or relate to them. And I think that's the best bit of it. And looking forward to more stories with the guys, hopefully on the after party.
So from my point of view, I think it's seeing the number of things you can do with automation. And I love the fact that people like Microsoft are coming on board and saying this is all the stuff we're doing, because you sometimes worry that it's Red Hat, it's Linux, it's just going to go down that Linux route, and it's going to carry on doing automating the open source stuff. But when you get the big companies like Microsoft and Cisco and everybody else on board in F5 that are doing all these great things with automation, it makes me think that I can go and really sell it back in the office, and I can talk to the Microsoft diehards to say, look, yeah, it's running on Linux, but it's not going to break your stuff. People have looked at it, and yeah, that's what I really get out of things like this, is to see how it's all coming together and how quickly it's going. Because the first Ansible Fest I went to in London in 2016, I was sort of sat out where you guys are and going, yeah, what's Ansible? I don't really get it. And then we got it installed, we got working with it, and then within 12 months, I was then presenting on the Ansible Fest in London, saying what we'd actually managed to achieve, which was just like flash to bang, was amazing. And it's things like this which will give you that impetus to go back and start going, yeah, this stuff really can work. Yeah, it can be a bit hard. There are some bumps in the road, but we'll get somewhere, and we'll get somewhere quite quickly, which is great. So I think the takeaway for Red Hat is that, yeah, more beer. Possibly more wine and more food, and keep doing the great job that they're all doing. Thank you guys very much for coming and chatting to me today. Thanks everybody for listening.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you all for joining us. That was not planned, but the collaboration and the journey piece, that's fantastic, because that's what we believe as well. So tonight is our Ansible Fest party at Pont City Market. Shuttles will be running from you exit outside the hotel lobby, and there will be people holding signs. Shuttles will start at 5:45, and they will run continuously until 9:30 p.m. So if you want to go for a little bit and come back after an hour or two, that's absolutely okay. Shuttles will be running that whole time. Please join us in the open lounge now for a happy hour with our automation partners. Thank you all for a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow at 9 a.m. here.